It is the middle of a first date, and everything is going perfectly. Then, without warning, his chest lurches and a loud sound escapes him. A single sharp hic cuts through the candlelit silence. His date blinks, unsure whether to laugh or worry for him. He tries to recover his composure, and it happens again, immediately. Humanity has split the atom and mapped the human genome completely. But here is the crazy part. We still cannot stop this sound. A tiny involuntary spasm that no willpower can override on command. What if this glitch is actually a very old survival program? A program written 370 million years before your birth. To understand hiccups, we first need to look inside your chest. Your diaphragm is a thin sheet of muscle below your lung. Normally, it moves smoothly, pulling air in with a quiet, steady rhythm. During a hiccup, it suddenly jerks downward in one sharp spasm. About 35 milliseconds later, your voice box slams shut hard. That slamming sound against a rush of air makes the hic. This whole sequence can repeat 4 to 60 times every minute. Each spasm fires roughly 1 second apart, like a tiny drum beat. Common triggers include eating too fast or swallowing too much air. Carbonated soda is a classic culprit. Bubbling gas into your stomach, sudden excitement, stress, or a big temperature change can trigger it too. Folk remedies for hiccups are, frankly, delightfully absurd when you watch them. Some people hold their breath until their face turns faintly purple. Others drink water upside down, bent awkwardly over a kitchen sink. A classic trick: have a friend jump out and scare you badly, or swallow a spoonful of sugar and hope the spasm just stops. None of these tricks actually touch the nerve causing the problem. Most hiccup bouts end on their own within a few short minutes. So the real question is simple. Why do we even have this? For a modern human breathing air, this reflex does absolutely nothing useful. To find the answer, we need to travel back in time. Far back. 170 million years to be exact. Welcome to the Devonian. Picture a warm, shallow swamp, thick with algae and rotting plant matter. This is home to a strange creature, half fish, half something new. Meet our ancestor, a lobe-finned fish with stubby, muscular little limbs. It breathes two ways at once, through feathery gills and simple lungs. Its gills fan gently, filtering oxygen straight out of the murky water. But tucked behind them sits something new, a soft, primitive air sac. The swamp water is warm, stagnant, and dangerously low on oxygen. That oxygen shortage is exactly why lungs evolved in the first place. When water fails, our creature lifts its head up toward open air. It gulps down a mouthful and pushes it toward that new air sac. Imagine being this creature, breathing water one moment, air the very next. But there is a dangerous design flaw hiding inside this new arrangement. Air, water, and food all share exactly one narrow tube down the throat. One tube, two very different destinations. The lungs or the stomach. Send water down the wrong pipe, and those fragile new lungs flood. For a fish still mostly living underwater, that is a genuine crisis. It must keep pumping water across its gills to survive most days, but every single pump risks spilling straight into its precious air sac. Water rushes in through the mouth, sweeping across the delicate gill filaments. For one tense moment, that same water sits right at the entrance. The entrance to the fragile air sac evolution just spent ages building. One wrong twitch, and the whole experiment could quite literally drown itself. Predators circle nearby, so hesitating at the surface is not an option. This creature cannot simply stop breathing water until it figures things out. It needs both systems running, and running safely at the very same time. So evolution faces a genuine engineering problem. 370 million years ago. How do you pump water for gills without flooding brand new lungs? The answer, it turns out, is sitting inside your chest right now. Evolution does not plan ahead. It just keeps whatever barely manages to work. Across countless generations, random nerve wiring gets tested against life and death. Most variations fail quietly. A few, by accident, survive just a bit longer. One winning pattern finally emerges, and it is brutally simple. Step 1. A sharp, forceful gulp yanks water hard across the gills. Step 2. A small muscular valve slams shut at the very same instant. That valve is the ancient ancestor of your modern voice box, or glottis. Slam the valve shut, and water gets diverted safely away from the lungs. Gulp, then slam. Gulp, then slam. a rhythm repeated thousands of times a day. Creatures with clumsy timing on this reflex simply do not survive very long. Their air sacs flood, quietly, again and again, until they eventually stop breathing. Creatures with sharp, precise timing pass that timing straight to their offspring. Generation after generation, the reflex gets tuned tighter, faster, more reliable. Soon, it stops being a trick. It becomes hardwired, automatic, unconscious. A dedicated nerve forms, running from the head straight down to the gills. In a fish, that nerve barely has any distance at all to travel. The gills sit right beside the head, so the wiring stays short and tidy. This creature can now breathe water and air in the very same minute. Gulp for air, pump for water. Slam the valve, survive another day. It is, for its time and place, an absolutely genius piece of engineering. But the world around this creature is about to change enormously and fast. Swamps are slowly drying. Shorelines are creeping further and further outward. Spending time out of water starts looking less risky and more rewarding. Those stubby limbs begin pushing the body up, out of the shallows entirely. First a fin, then a foot-shaped stump presses down into soft mud. Balance is terrible. Movement is clumsy. But air, glorious air, is everywhere here. With so much oxygen available on land, lungs suddenly matter far more. Gills, by comparison, start becoming less and less necessary for survival. You can almost watch them shrinking across generations, fold by fold, gene by gene. And yet, watch closely. That gulp and slam reflex never actually goes away. The creature still gulps sharply, then slams its valve, purely out of habit. Even on dry land, with no water anywhere close by to speak of, it tilts its head, confused, as if asking its own body a question. Why are you still doing that? There is no water here to pump. But the ancient circuit does not know that. It just keeps firing anyway. This is the exact moment our story's real punchline quietly gets written. A reflex built for gills is about to outlive the gills themselves. It will not vanish. It will simply wait, tucked deep inside the brainstem, waiting for a body that no longer needs it. 370 million years later. Let's watch what happens next as these descendants leave the water for good. Welcome to the next great leap. The full evolutionary shift onto dry land. Our creature's descendants now walk confidently, breathing exclusively through lungs alone. But something else, something subtle, is quietly happening to their basic anatomy. In fish, the skull and shoulder are fused together into one rigid block. On land, that fusion breaks apart, and a brand new structure appears. A neck. A flexible gap between the head and the rest of the body. Meanwhile, the gills are finally completely gone, replaced fully by working lungs. Below those lungs, a brand new muscle sheet forms, the diaphragm itself. Strangely, that diaphragm develops from tissue that starts out near the throat. And its controlling nerve? It still originates way up near the neck. As the neck stretches longer and longer across generations, something odd happens. The nerve gets dragged along for the ride, instead of being rerouted. Evolution never went back to redesign the wiring from scratch. Not once. So today, your phrenic nerve takes an absurdly long, looping detour downward. It travels from your neck, past your collarbone, deep into your chest. In a fish, that same nerve barely traveled any distance at all. In you, it winds down a route several inches longer than it needs. Evolution is a weird thing. It almost never deletes old, awkward code. It just builds new features directly on top of whatever came before. And deep in your brainstem, one old file never got deleted either. The gulp and slam motor program is still sitting there, fully intact, dormant mostly, quiet mostly, waiting for the right, wrong trigger to fire. So here is a fair question. Does anything alive still use this file? Does any living creature still run this exact ancient program on purpose? Yes. And you do not need to travel back in time to see it. Walk to any nearby pond and look closely at a swimming tadpole. A tadpole still breathes through gills, just like our ancient ancestor once did. Watch closely as it gulps water, then instantly slams a valve shut. That is the exact same motor pattern, running after 370 million years. Side by side, a tadpole's gulp and a human hiccup look eerily similar. Same nerve circuit, same gulp, same slam. Just wearing very different bodies. For the tadpole, this reflex still does its original life-saving job perfectly. It keeps water pumping through its gills and out of its budding lung. In other words, tadpoles are living proof this ancient program still works flawlessly. Fish, tetrapod, tadpole, human. 4 very different bodies running one identical circuit. This is the single strongest piece of evidence in our entire evolutionary case. So what happens when this exact circuit fires inside a fully grown human? A human with lungs, no gills, and absolutely no water anywhere nearby. Let's trace the whole chain one more time, from swamp to your dinner table. This ancient survival trick is about to become your dinner party legacy. Meet our modern stickman again, eating lunch far too quickly at his desk. His stomach stretches fast, and a nerve signal shoots straight up his chest. That signal travels toward the very same old brainstem circuit we just discussed. The brainstem cannot always tell context from 370 million years apart. It reads stretch signal near the throat and quietly reaches for the old file. The diaphragm jerks downward sharply, exactly like an ancient gill pumping gulp. Milliseconds later, his glottis slams shut, exactly like that ancient protective valve. The ancient program just fired, entirely by accident, inside a grown adult. There is no water here. There are no gills here. Just leftover wiring. Soda works the same trick, filling his stomach with sharp little gas bubbles. Those bubbles stretch the same nerve, and the same old circuit fires again. He hiccups through an entire important meeting, mortified, unable to make it stop. Stress and excitement can flip this same ancient switch too, oddly enough. A racing heart and shallow breathing can confuse the very same brainstem circuit. So can a sudden gulp of cold air or a swallow of hot soup. Public speaking, first dates, big interviews, all classic triggers for this old glitch. In every single case, his body is trying to protect lungs from a flood of water that, of course, is never actually coming these days. Imagine being a human 100,000 years ago, hiccuping by a fire. Same reflex, same confused, useless firing. Humans have lived with this glitch forever. Modern doctors still do not have one guaranteed cure that always works. Most home remedies just quietly interrupt the rhythm, without touching the nerve directly. Holding your breath raises carbon dioxide, which can sometimes reset brainstem rhythm gently. That is the one folk remedy with a real, if modest, scientific mechanism. Everything else is mostly a comforting distraction while the reflex tires itself out. And it usually does tire itself out within just a couple of minutes. Because this program was only ever built to run for a few gulps, not for an entire awkward dinner or a nerve-wracking job interview. Your body, quite literally, briefly forgets it stopped breathing through gills long ago. It is not broken. It is simply 370 million years out of date. Let's return to that first date, right where our story first began tonight. The hiccup hits again, sharp and sudden, right in the middle of dinner. This time, though, our stickman just smiles instead of panicking about it. Beside him, for one flickering second, a faint, ancient fish silhouette appears. 170 million years of practice, just to make one small sound. Evolution is a weird thing. It never throws anything away, only piles on. So next time you hiccup at the worst possible moment, do not get angry. Just quietly say hello to the ancient fish still living in your chest. If you enjoyed this evolutionary paradox, subscribe for a brand new one weekly. See you next time, when your own body surprises you all over again.